Smoke poured from the damaged ship as it crashed into the cornfield. The impact shook the ground for miles. Zarthalic hit his head on the control panel and cursed in his native language. This was bad. Very bad. His ship, the Stellar Drift, was not supposed to be in this sector, let alone on this primitive planet. The engine failure couldn't have happened at a worse time. He checked the ship's computer. The self-repair system was working, but it would take at least 3 Earth days to fix the main drive. Zarthalic looked outside. Tall green plants surrounded his ship. The air was breathable, according to his sensors, but who knew what else lived on this world? His 4-fingered hand reached for his weapon. He had to be careful. 10 miles away, Joe Clark was driving home after a late night at his garage. At 34, he was the best mechanic in Cedar County, Iowa. People came from 3 counties over to get their cars fixed by him. The sky lit up to his right. Joe slowed his truck and watched as something bright fell from the sky and crashed beyond the tree line. "Holy cow," Joe whispered. He turned his truck onto the dirt road leading toward the Henderson farm. His heart raced. Was it a plane? A meteor? Whatever it was, he had to check it out. Joe parked his truck at the edge of the cornfield and grabbed his flashlight. The corn had been flattened in a wide path leading to something big and metal. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything Joe had ever seen before. "Hello," Joe called out. "Anyone hurt? I can help." Inside the ship, Zarthalic froze. The translator picked up the local language. A native was outside. This was not part of the plan. He could try to take off, but the engines were too damaged. He could hide, but the native had clearly seen the ship. With a sigh, Zarthalic decided to face the situation. After all, these humans were supposed to be primitive. How dangerous could one be? The door to the ship opened with a hiss. Joe stepped back, his mouth open in shock. A tall, thin figure stood in the doorway. It had grayish-blue skin, large eyes, and a mouth that seemed too wide for its face. It wore some kind of uniform with symbols Joe didn't recognize. "You are not running away," the alien said in a strange accent. Most humans would run away. Joe blinked several times. "I'm Joe Clark. You're not from around here, are you?" "I am Zarthalic of the Veltraxian Merchant Guild. My ship has experienced a failure. I require time for repairs before I can leave your world." Joe looked at the ship with growing excitement. The shock was wearing off, replaced by curiosity. All his life he had loved machines, figuring out how they worked, making them better. And now, an actual spaceship was sitting in front of him. "Can I see inside?" Joe asked. "Maybe I can help fix it." Zarthalic made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your species has not even reached your next planet. How could you possibly help with Veltraxian technology?" Joe crossed his arms. "Listen, buddy, I don't care if you're from Mars or Michigan. An engine is an engine. It makes power to move things. I've been fixing engines since I was 12. The alien studied Joe for a long moment. The self-repair system would take days, and every hour increased the risk of discovery. What did he have to lose? "Very well, Joe Clark. You may examine the propulsion system, but touch nothing without my permission." Joe grinned and stepped forward into the ship. The door closed behind him. Inside, lights blinked on strange panels. The air smelled like metal and something sweet Joe couldn't identify. Zarthalic led him to the rear of the ship where a large glowing cylinder pulsed with blue light. "This is the main drive," Zarthalic explained. "The containment field was damaged when I tried to avoid your planet's satellites." Joe leaned closer, his eyes wide with wonder. The technology was alien, but he could see the purpose of different components. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. "I think I can help you," Joe said quietly. "But I'm going to need some time. And my tools." Joe returned to the crashed ship early the next morning. He brought a large toolbox and a bag full of parts from his garage. The morning dew soaked his jeans as he walked through the corn. He had barely slept, his mind racing with ideas all night. Zarthalic waited at the entrance of his ship. The alien looked tired. He had spent the night running tests and trying to speed up the self-repair system. "You actually came back," Zarthalic said, sounding surprised. "Said I would, didn't I?" Joe set down his toolbox. "Did you think I'd call the government or something?" "Most species would." Joe shrugged. "I just want to see how that engine of yours works." Inside the ship, Joe studied the damaged engine more carefully. The blue light pulsed slower now. Several panels were open, showing complex parts Joe had never seen before. But the more he looked, the more he understood. "This is amazing," Joe said, pointing to a spinning part. "This creates the power, right?" "Like a turbine." Zarthalic nodded. "It converts fuel into usable energy. Very advanced technology." Joe looked closer. "Advanced materials, sure. But the design is." He paused, not wanting to insult the alien. "It could be better." "Better." "This is Veltraxian engineering. We have traveled the stars for 1,000 years." Joe pulled out a notebook and started sketching. "Look here. Your power converter is operating at maybe 60% efficiency. The energy flow is restricted in these 3 places." He pointed to narrow sections in the engine. Zarthalic stared at the human's drawing. "That is correct. But how did you know?" "It's like a car engine. Flow matters. Restricted flow means lost power." Joe showed more drawings. "If we modify these sections, widen them, and add a second converter here, you could get at least 40% more power from the same amount of fuel." The alien crossed his arms. "Impossible. Our engineers would have done that if it worked." "Maybe they're too used to doing things one way." Joe grinned. "On Earth, we call it hot rodding. Taking something good and making it better, faster." Zarthalic seemed doubtful but curious. "The self-repair will take 2 more days. You may make small changes while we wait. Small changes only." Joe nodded excitedly and got to work. He laid out his tools and started examining the engine parts more closely. Some were made of materials he had never seen, but the principles were the same as Earth engines: pressure, flow, combustion, power. By midday, Joe had modified one small section of the power converter. Zarthalic watched with growing interest as the human worked confidently with alien technology. "Ready to test it," Joe said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Zarthalic went to the control panel and activated the engine at low power. The blue light pulsed faster than before. The alien checked the readings, and his eyes widened. 7% increase in power output, with no additional fuel consumption. He looked at Joe with new respect. "How is this possible?" "Told you. Flow matters." Joe pointed to other sections. "If you let me work on these areas, I bet we can get that up to 20% by tonight." Zarthalic was about to respond when an alarm sounded. A small screen showed a vehicle driving down the dirt road toward the cornfield. "Someone's coming," Joe said, looking at the screen. "Is it your government?" Zarthalic grabbed a weapon. Joe peered at the image. "No, it's a black car. Looks like a woman driving." The image zoomed in to show a woman with short brown hair. She wore a dark suit and sunglasses. She stopped her car and looked around, then took out a small device and pointed it toward the cornfield. "That's not good," Joe said. "She's got some kind of detector." "We don't have time for more repairs," Zarthalic said urgently. "I must leave now, even with the damaged engine." Joe looked at the engine, then back at the screen showing the woman getting closer. "Your ship can't make it to space like this." He made a quick decision. "Let me finish the first round of modifications. Make it strong enough for at least one good jump." Zarthalic hesitated, then nodded. "You have 1 hour, Joe Clark. Then we must risk departure." Joe worked faster than he ever had before. His hands moved quickly over the alien engine, making adjustments and adding parts from his toolbox. Zarthalic watched the woman on the screen as she walked through the cornfield, getting closer to the ship. "She will find us in 20 minutes, Zarthalic said. "Can you finish in time?" Joe didn't look up from his work. "Almost done with the main power converter. This will give us enough boost to get out of here." The human's confidence surprised Zarthalic. In just one day, Joe had learned more about Veltraxian technology than most aliens did in years. The ship's computer showed that the modified sections were now working at 80% efficiency, much higher than the factory standard. "How do you understand my ship so well?" Zarthalic asked. Joe smiled as he connected two pieces with a tool he had made himself. "Engines are engines. Doesn't matter if they're in a tractor or a spaceship. It's all about getting the most power from your fuel." He pointed to a section near the top of the engine. "This part here is like a turbocharger on Earth. It pushes more fuel into the power chamber, but your design wastes energy. I made it more direct." Joe stepped back and wiped his hands on a rag. "That should do it. Power should be up by 30% now." Zarthalic checked the computer. The readings were better than he had ever seen on his ship. "This is impressive. Thanks. Now let's test it before." An alarm sounded. The woman was now just 50 yards from the ship. "No time," Zarthalic said. "We must leave now." "We?" Joe asked, surprised. "I cannot leave you here to be questioned." And Zarthalic hesitated. "I may need your help if something goes wrong." Joe looked around. He hadn't planned on leaving Earth, but the chance to fly in a real spaceship was too good to pass up. Plus, he didn't want to explain to the government how he had helped an alien. "Okay," Joe said. "Let's go." Zarthalic moved to the control panel and started the launch sequence. Joe strapped himself into a seat that was clearly not designed for humans. The ship hummed as the engine powered up. Outside, Linda Peterson saw the cornfield moving. Something big was under those plants. She pulled out her phone to call for backup, but stopped when she felt the ground shake. Inside the ship, Joe felt a push as the stellar drift lifted off the ground. The engines roared louder than before, thanks to his modifications. "Whoa," Joe said as they shot up into the sky. "That's some serious power." Zarthalic looked at the controls with surprise. "We are climbing much faster than normal. Your changes worked better than expected." The ship broke through the clouds in seconds. Joe looked out a small window and saw the curve of Earth below. His heart raced with excitement. "I've never seen Earth from space before," he said quietly. "It's beautiful." Zarthalic was about to respond when another alarm sounded. The computer screen showed a red dot moving toward them from orbit. "What is that?" Joe asked. "Trouble," Zarthalic said. "A Veltraxian ship, probably sent by my creditors." "Creditors? You mean like debt collectors?" "Yes. I owe money to some dangerous people. I was supposed to deliver cargo to pay them back." Zarthalic looked worried. "They must have tracked my ship to your planet." The red dot moved closer on the screen. A message appeared in alien writing, then translated to English. "Attention, stellar drift. This is the Void Talon. You are ordered to stop and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in your destruction." Joe looked at Zarthalic. "Can this ship outrun them?" "Not normally," Zarthalic said. "The Void Talon is a military-grade ship, much faster than my old merchant vessel." Joe smiled. "Well, this isn't a normal ship anymore. I bet my modifications can give us the edge." He pointed to another section of the engine. "If you let me make one more adjustment, I can squeeze out another 15% power." Zarthalic looked at the approaching ship, then at Joe. "Do it quickly. They will be in weapons range in 10 minutes." Joe's hands moved quickly inside the engine compartment. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he worked. The Void Talon was getting closer every minute. Zarthalic watched the radar screen with growing fear. "They are 7 minutes away," Zarthalic said. "Their weapons will be in range soon." "Almost done," Joe replied. He connected two different power lines together using a special coupling he had made from parts in his toolbox. This is like nitrous for a race car. It will give us a big burst of speed, but only for a short time. The ship shook as Zarthelic made a sharp turn to buy them more time. Joe fell against the wall, but quickly got back to work. He tightened the last connection and closed the panel. Done. Get to the controls, Joe said. I'll tell you when to hit it. They rushed to the front of the ship. Zarthelic sat in the pilot's seat while Joe stood behind him, watching the screens. The Void Talon is faster and has better weapons, Zarthelic explained. They are gaining on us. The pursuing ship was now visible through the front window. It was larger than the stellar drift, with sleek lines and glowing weapons ports. A voice came through the communication system. This is Captain Dresvaker of the Void Talon. Zarthelic, you have failed to pay your debts for the last time. Stop now, and we will only take your ship and cargo. Continue to run, and we will take your life as well. Zarthelic looked at Joe with worry. Dresvaker is one of the best pilots in Veltraxian space, and his ship is top of the line. Joe smiled. Yeah, but he's never chased a hot-rodded ship before. See that asteroid field ahead? Head straight for it. The asteroid field. That's too dangerous at these speeds. Trust me, your ship can handle it now. And I bet they won't expect that move. Zarthelic hesitated, then turned the ship toward the field of floating rocks. The Void Talon adjusted course to follow them. They're still coming, Zarthelic said. Good. Now, when I say so, hit that blue button I installed next to your left hand. But only when I say. The stellar drift entered the asteroid field. Zarthelic's skilled piloting helped them avoid the larger rocks, but it was still a rough ride. The ship bounced and shook as smaller asteroids hit the hull. Behind them, the Void Talon followed more cautiously. Its larger size made it harder to navigate between the asteroids. They were falling behind. It's working, Zarthelic said with surprise. They're losing ground. They're still too close, Joe said. We need a bigger gap. He looked at the radar and the asteroid field ahead. There, see that cluster of big rocks? Fly straight toward it. Then when I say, hit the blue button and pull up hard. That's suicide, Zarthelic protested. No, it's racing. Sometimes you have to aim at the wall to make the other guy back off. Zarthelic didn't understand the reference, but he trusted Joe's strange plan. He aimed the ship at the dense cluster of asteroids. The Void Talon stayed close behind. They think we're trapped now, Joe said. Get ready. The asteroids grew larger in the front window. They were massive rocks that could easily destroy the ship. Zarthelic's hands tightened on the controls. The Void Talon was closing the gap. Not yet. Joe watched carefully. Almost. The asteroids were now so close that they filled the entire view. Zarthelic began to panic. Now, Joe shouted. Hit it now. Zarthelic pressed the blue button and pulled up hard. The ship lurched as the modified engine released a massive burst of power. The stellar drift shot upward at incredible speed, barely missing the asteroids. The sudden acceleration pushed both Joe and Zarthelic back into their seats. Behind them, the Void Talon tried to copy the maneuver, but was too large and too slow. It clipped one of the asteroids, spinning out of control. Alarms blared on both ships. We did it, Joe cheered as they cleared the asteroid field. They hit one. Look at them spin. Zarthelic checked the radar. The Void Talon had stopped pursuing them and was now making emergency repairs. I can't believe that worked, Zarthelic said, his voice filled with shock and admiration. How did you know they would follow us? Joe grinned. Racing is the same everywhere. When someone thinks they have the better machine, they get cocky. They never expect the underdog to do something crazy. Their victory was short-lived. The radar beeped again, showing the Void Talon was moving once more. It had recovered from hitting the asteroid and was now changing course to follow them. They're coming back, Zarthelic said, his relief fading quickly. Joe looked at the engine readings. The boost system needs time to recharge. We can't use it again for at least 20 minutes. The stellar drift flew deeper into space, away from Earth. Zartheluk pointed to a large planet on the navigation screen. That's a gas giant, similar to your Jupiter. If we can reach it, maybe we can use its gravity to help us. Good thinking, Joe said. Like slingshot racing back home. But we need more speed. He thought for a moment. Can I access the main power settings from here? Zartheluk nodded and pulled up a control panel on a side screen. Joe studied it, then made several adjustments. The ship hummed louder. What did you do? Zartheluk asked. Redirected power from non-essential systems to the engines. We'll have less life support and weaker shields, but more speed. The ship accelerated toward the gas giant. The Void Talon grew smaller on the radar, falling behind temporarily. But its engines were stronger, and it began gaining on them again. They're still faster, Zartheluk said. We won't reach the planet before they catch us. Joe looked around the control room. Do you have any cargo you can drop? Something big. Yes, in the hold. Boxes of rare minerals. Why? Drop them right in their path. It might slow them down. Zartheluk quickly entered commands. The ship shuddered as the cargo bay doors opened. Several large containers flew out behind them. The Void Talon had to swerve to avoid them, buying the stellar drift more time. The gas giant grew larger in their view. Huge, swirling clouds of orange and red covered its surface. Joe pointed to the screen. See those rings? They're made of ice and rock. If we fly through them, it'll be harder for them to follow without getting hit. Zartheluk adjusted their course toward the planet's rings. The Void Talon was gaining again, now close enough that they could see it clearly through the rear view screen. They're in weapons range, Zartheluk warned. Brace yourself. A bright beam of energy shot past the ship, missing by only a few feet. The stellar drift shook from the near miss. They're trying to disable our engines, Zartheluk explained. The next shot might hit us. Joe looked at the engine controls. The boost system is still charging. We need another trick. He thought quickly. The ship's exhaust system. Can you make it release more visible particles? Yes, but why would we want to be more visible? Trust me, make it as thick and cloudy as possible. Zartheluk adjusted the settings. The ship's engines now released a thick, dark cloud behind them. It spread out, forming a growing wall between them and the Void Talon. Now cut all power for 3 seconds, then turn hard left, Joe instructed. That will make us drop speed. They'll catch us faster. Exactly what they'll think. Do it. Zartheluk hesitated, then followed Joe's instructions. The ship went dark and silent for 3 terrifying seconds, then the power came back on as they veered sharply left. On the radar, they could see the Void Talon continuing straight ahead, shooting through the exhaust cloud where they should have been. It worked, Joe exclaimed. They thought we were still going straight. An old street racing trick. The Void Talon realized its mistake and turned to follow them. But now the stellar drift had a good lead. They'd reached the planet's rings first, diving into the field of ice and rocks. Flying through the rings was dangerous. Ice chunks and boulders bounced off the hull. Zartheluk piloted carefully, while Joe monitored the engine levels. The boost system is almost recharged, Joe said. And I have another idea. See that big gap in the rings up ahead? When we reach it, use the boost and dive toward the planet's atmosphere. The atmosphere. We can't land on a gas giant. We're not landing. We're going to skim it. Use its gravity and atmosphere to slingshot us away at even higher speed. Zartheluk looked at Joe like he was crazy. No Voltraxian would attempt such a maneuver. Joe grinned. That's why it'll work. They won't expect it. Behind them, the Void Talon entered the rings, still in pursuit. Captain Dresvecker's voice came over the communication system again, angry and threatening. Your little tricks won't save you, Zarthalic. Surrender now or be destroyed. Zarthalic looked at Joe, who nodded confidently. The gas giant loomed before them, massive and intimidating. The gap in the rings approached. Ready? Joe asked. This is going to be one wild ride. The stellar drift shot through the gap in the rings, heading straight for the gas giant's upper atmosphere. Zarthalic's hands were steady on the controls, but his eyes showed fear. No sane pilot would fly so close to such a massive planet. Boost ready, Joe said, watching the engine levels. Hit it in 3, 2, 1, now. Zarthalic pressed the blue button. The ship lurched forward with incredible speed. The gas giant filled their entire view, its swirling storms growing larger by the second. We're going too fast, Zarthalic shouted. We'll crash into the atmosphere. Not if you pull up at exactly the right moment, Joe said. He pointed to a reading on the screen. When that number hits 2.7, pull up hard and cut the boost. Behind them, the Void Talon was closing in again. It fired another energy beam that grazed the stellar drift's rear shield. Alarms sounded throughout the ship. Shields down to 40%, Zarthalic reported. One more hit like that, and we're in trouble. The planet's gravity began to pull on the ship, adding to their speed. Warning lights flashed as they approached the atmosphere. Almost there, Joe said, watching the numbers closely. Get ready. The Void Talon fired again. This time, the beam missed completely as the stellar drift's speed made it hard to target. 2.8, 2.7. Now, Joe shouted. Zarthalic pulled up sharply and cut the boost. The ship groaned under the strain as it skimmed the very top of the gas giant's atmosphere. Orange clouds brushed against the bottom of the hull. The temperature readings spiked dangerously. Hull temperature rising fast, Zarthalic warned. We can't stay this close for long. Just a few more seconds, Joe said. We need to complete the slingshot. The ship began to curve around the planet, using its massive gravity to gain even more speed. Behind them, the Void Talon hesitated, not willing to follow such a risky path. They're holding back, Joe said triumphantly. They're afraid to follow us, this close to the atmosphere. Dresveker's voice came through again, now with a hint of respect mixed with his anger. This is madness, Zarthalic. No ship can survive that close to the gravity well. This one can, Zarthalic replied with new confidence. He looked at Joe and nodded. My human engineer has made some improvements. The ship continued its arc around the planet, gaining more and more speed from the gravity slingshot. The Void Talon tried to cut across to intercept them, but couldn't match their velocity. It's working, Joe exclaimed. We're now moving faster than their top speed. Suddenly, a massive storm erupted from the planet below them. A huge red cloud rose up directly in their path. Storm front, Zarthalic yelled. We need to pull up now, or we'll be caught in it. Joe checked the engine readings. The boost is drained, but we have enough regular power. Pull up as fast as you can. Zarthalic pulled back on the controls with all his strength. The stellar drift began to rise, fighting against the planet's gravity. The storm reached up with swirling fingers of gas, trying to pull them down. The ship shook violently. Warning lights flashed everywhere. A panel near Joe exploded in a shower of sparks. Hull integrity at 60%, Zarthalic reported. Engine temperature critical. Just a little more, Joe urged. We're almost clear. With a final effort, the stellar drift broke free of the planet's gravity well. They shot away from the gas giant at incredible speed, leaving both the storm and the Void Talon far behind. Zarthalic let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. We did it. That was awesome. Joe finished for him, a huge smile on his face. That was the ride of a lifetime. On the radar, they could see the Void Talon struggling. It had tried to follow them part way into the maneuver, but had been caught by the storm's edge. The larger ship was now limping away from the planet with damaged engines. Dresviker's voice came through once more, now filled with disbelief. "This is impossible. No merchant vessel could perform such maneuvers." Zarthalic looked at Joe with newfound respect and replied, "Mine can now." He turned off the communication system and set a course away from the planet. "Where did you learn to fly like that?" Joe shrugged. "Dirt track racing back in Iowa. Same principles, really. Use your environment, know your machine's limits, and be willing to try what the other guy thinks is crazy." For the first time since they met, Zarthalic laughed. "Human Joe Clark, I think this is the beginning of a very interesting partnership." 3 days had passed since their escape from the Void Talon. Joe and Zarthalic had spent that time making repairs and further improvements to the stellar drift. The ship now looked quite different inside. Joe had rebuilt many sections of the engine and added control panels that made more sense to him. "The power coupling is now at 95% efficiency," Joe said, wiping grease from his hands. "That's probably the best we can get without completely rebuilding the whole thing." Zarthalic nodded, impressed. "When we started, it was at 60%. No Veltraxian engineer has ever achieved such results." Joe smiled and looked out the window at the stars. He still couldn't believe he was in space, traveling faster than any human had before. Sometimes he missed Earth, but the excitement of exploring the galaxy with his new friend made up for it. "So where are we headed now?" Joe asked. "There's a space station not far from here. Traders and merchants from many worlds go there." Zarthalic pulled up a map on the main screen. "It's called Haven Station. We can sell what's left of my cargo and get supplies." Joe looked at the map with interest. "Will there be other aliens there? I mean, besides Veltraxians." "Many different species. Some may have never seen a human before." Zarthalic paused. "You might get a lot of attention." "I can handle it," Joe said with a grin. "But what about Dresvaker and his friends? Won't they be looking for us?" "The station has strict rules against violence, and after our last encounter, I doubt they want to face us again so soon." Zarthalic checked the radar. No signs of pursuit for now. The ship continued through space at high speed. Joe had grown more comfortable with the alien technology and now helped with navigation and controls. He'd even learned some Veltraxian words. "You know," Joe said as they prepared for the final approach to the station, "we could make a good business out of this." "What do you mean?" "Your ship is now faster and more efficient than any other Veltraxian vessel its size. We could offer special deliveries for high-paying customers. Or," Joe's eyes lit up with excitement, "we could even enter racing competitions if they have those." Zarthalic considered this. "There are ship races in some systems. The prizes can be substantial. But most racers use specially built ships." "Yeah, but they've never seen what a human mechanic can do with a regular ship." Joe pointed to the engine room. "We're just getting started with the modifications. Imagine what we could do with better parts and more time." The space station appeared in the distance. It was huge, with rings and spokes extending from a central hub. Ships of various sizes and shapes moved around it. "Haven Station," Zarthalic announced. "Home to traders, adventurers, and opportunity seekers from 100 worlds." Joe watched in amazement as they approached. The station grew larger in the window, its lights twinkling like a city in space. It was more incredible than anything he had imagined back in Iowa. "We're getting a transmission," Zarthalic said. A voice spoke in an alien language, then switched to English. "Unidentified Veltraxian vessel, please identify yourself and state your purpose." "This is the Stellar Drift merchant vessel," Zarthalic replied, "requesting permission to dock for trading and repairs." There was a pause, then the voice returned. "Stellar Drift, our sensors are showing unusual power readings from your ship. Are you experiencing difficulties?" Zarthalic looked at Joe and smiled. "No difficulties. We've just made some improvements." "Understood, Stellar Drift. Proceed to docking Bay 7. As they moved toward the station, Joe noticed other ships slowing down to look at them. Their engine signature must be attracting attention. "I think we're already famous," Joe said. They docked smoothly at the assigned bay. Through the window, Joe could see aliens of various shapes and sizes moving around the dock area. Some stopped to stare at the stellar drift. "Ready to meet the galaxy, Joe Clark?" Zarvelic asked as he opened the ship's door. Joe took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready as I'll ever be." He stepped toward the door, excited and nervous. "So what's our plan? Find cargo jobs, look for races, or just show off our amazing ship?" Zarvelic put a four-fingered hand on Joe's shoulder. "First, we celebrate our escape and new partnership. Then I think it's time to show the galaxy what happens when Veltraxian technology meets human ingenuity." Joe smiled as they walked together toward the station entrance. It was the beginning of an adventure beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. The mechanic from Iowa and the alien merchant, united by engines, speed, and the open road of stars.